January 3, 2026, Caracas, Venezuela. As U.S. Delta Force bullets riddled the walls of Nicolás Maduro's palace, cutting through the darkness of the night, foreign blood was being spilled on Venezuelan soil. When the pile of bodies was counted after the operation, a startling fact emerged. Of the 75 security guards killed, at least 32 were Cuban citizens. These were members of Cuba's elite intelligence and special forces, who had guarded Maduro for years. But that night, they couldn't save Maduro, nor could they save themselves. With the coffins of these 32 men, perhaps the construction of the final nail in the coffin of Havana, or Cuba's communist government, has begun. From Washington, D.C., President Donald Trump sent a thunderous message via his Truth Social handle. He wrote, "Not a single drop of oil will go to Cuba anymore, not a single dollar. Zero. Make a deal before time runs out." Standing beside him, his Secretary of State Marco Rubio, the son of Cuban immigrants, smiled slightly and said, "If I were in the government in Havana right now, I would be very worried." America's hostility towards Cuba is not new. It is nearly 7 decades old, but the context this time is different. After losing Venezuela, Cuba is practically an orphan. No Maduro, no oil, no money. There is only America's maximum pressure. Why has the Trump administration suddenly turned its full attention to Cuba? Why do Marco Rubio and Florida Republicans think this is the best time to bury the 1959 revolution? And will the impenetrable fortress built by Fidel Castro finally collapse this time? In today's episode, we will try to understand this turbulent geopolitics of the Caribbean Sea and the future of Havana. November 1999, Havana, Cuba. The galleries of the Estadio Latinoamericano are packed to the brim. It is hard to hear anything over the roar of 50,000 spectators. But this excitement is not for a World Cup final. This excitement surrounds the historic meeting of two revolutionaries. Venezuela's newly elected young president, 45-year-old Hugo Chavez, entered the field. He wore a windbreaker in the colors of the Venezuelan flag. And standing in the dugout as manager was Cuba's undisputed leader, 73-year-old Fidel Castro. That day, with every swing of the baseball bat, a new chapter in Latin American history was being written. Chavez was the glowing symbol of youth, and Castro was a mountain of experience. Castro found his own youth in Chavez that day, and Chavez found his ideological father. Behind the chants of "Chavez, Chavez," the deal made that day was not signed on paper. It was a pact of soul and survival. It was decided then and there. Venezuela's oil and Cuba's brains would merge into one. To understand the depth of this relationship, we must look back a little. After the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991, Cuba became an orphan. Their economic backbone collapsed. Without oil, tractors didn't run, crops didn't grow in the fields, and factory wheels stopped turning. The Cuban people called this the special period, which was essentially a polite name for famine. In that death-defying moment, Hugo Chavez became the lifeline for Cuba. Chavez held the world's largest oil reserves, but he lacked skilled manpower, doctors, teachers, and most importantly, a trusted intelligence system. Chavez knew he was surrounded by enemies and that the CIA was conspiring to oust him. Thus began one of the strangest exchange systems in modern geopolitics, a unique barter system. Venezuela began sending about 100,000 barrels of oil to Cuba daily, at prices far below market rates and on long-term credit. This oil breathed life back into Cuba's economy. Cars started running on Havana's streets again, and power plants became operational. What did Cuba give in return? Cuba sent its best resource to Venezuela: people. Thousands of Cuban doctors went into the slums of Venezuela to provide free medical treatment. Teachers spread the light of education, but behind this, a deeper game was played. From Havana, Cuba's most formidable intelligence officers and military advisors flew to Caracas. Energy expert Francisco Monaldi of Rice University explained it this way: what Cuba was giving back did not equal the price of oil in financial terms, but politically, it was priceless. Cuban intelligence agents known as the G2 rebuilt the Venezuelan army and the intelligence agency SEBIN. They became the apple of Chavez's and later Maduro's eye. It was the responsibility of these Cubans to find out who was conspiring within the Venezuelan army and who was an American spy. The entire responsibility of Maduro's personal security or presidential guard was in the hands of Cuban special forces. But this romantic story of politics ended tragically. January 3, 2026. After the American Delta Force raid in Caracas, when the pile of bodies was being moved, a terrible truth was revealed. Of the 75 security guards killed trying to protect Maduro, 32 were Cuban citizens. These were not ordinary bodyguards. They were Cuba's invisible shield, who had kept the Venezuelan government afloat for the last 2 decades. Their deaths prove how deep the relationship between Cuba and Venezuela was. But with Maduro's arrest, that umbilical cord has been severed. The new Venezuelan administration and Trump's America have jointly shut off the oil pipeline to Cuba. Trump's message is clear: zero oil. The oil that kept Cuba's economic engine running for the last 25 years has vanished today. Cuba's power plants are now silent. Factory wheels have stopped. That dream baseball match of Hugo Chavez and Fidel Castro has turned into a nightmare today. The Trump administration knows very well that there is no need to fire missiles to defeat Cuba. Just cutting the Venezuelan oil line will plunge Havana into darkness. And in darkness, with empty stomachs, revolutions do not last long. Washington, D.C., Harry S. Truman Building. Sitting on the 7th floor of the U.S. State Department is the current Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. Through the window of his massive office, Capitol Hill is visible in the distance. But Rubio's gaze, or his mind's eye, is not on Washington. It is fixed across the Florida Straits, exactly 90 miles south, on Cuba. Marco Rubio is the first Secretary of State in American history with Cuban blood running through his veins. His parents fled Cuba to America in 1956, just before Fidel Castro's revolution. Since childhood, Rubio heard stories of that lost island from his grandfather. He heard how the communists took everything from them, how they were forced into exile. So for Marco Rubio, Cuba policy is not just an ordinary State Department file or bureaucratic task. To him, it is deeply personal. It is a fight to restore the lost honor of his ancestors. He believes his life's ultimate goal is to lower the hammer and sickle flag from the heart of Havana. But Donald Trump isn't Cuban, so why is he fueling Rubio's personal war? The answer lies in the equation of American domestic politics, and the name of that equation is Florida. Once Florida was a swing state in American politics. Democrats won sometimes, Republicans won other times. But in the last decade, this equation has completely changed. Florida is now an impenetrable fortress for the Republican Party, and the architect behind this change is the Latino vote bank, specifically Cuban Americans and Venezuelan Americans. Go in front of the famous Versailles restaurant in Miami's Little Havana, and you can feel the pulse of this politics. The main topic of the chats that happen here from morning to evening is singular: hatred for socialism. The older Cubans here hate Fidel Castro, and the newly arrived Venezuelans hate Maduro. Donald Trump has very cleverly converted this hatred or anger into his vote bank. In July 2024, at a massive rally at his golf club, when he shouted with veins bulging, "Joe Biden and Kamala Harris want to turn America into Cuba. They want to turn America into Venezuela," the thousands in attendance erupted in cheers. To Trump, Cuba is not just an island, it is a political tool. He scares mainstream American voters by saying, "Look at the consequences of socialism. Do you want America to look like that?" Using this fear factor, Trump has established a monopoly in Florida. And to maintain this dominance, he needs Marco Rubio. Rubio is the bridge that connects Trump to the Latino community. After the fall of Maduro, this massive community in Florida now wants the fall of Cuba in flesh and blood. Trump knows that if he can bring down Cuba's communist government during his term, the door for Democrats in Florida will be closed for the next 100 years. The Republican Party will become the true friend of Latinos. Since taking over as Secretary of State, Marco Rubio has designed a maximum pressure strategy against Cuba. Barack Obama wanted to change Cuba through friendship, but Rubio believes you cannot make friends with a tiger, you must put it in a cage. Rubio and his ally, Florida Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart, have convinced Trump that this moment, with Venezuelan oil cut off, is the golden hour to strike Cuba. They argue, Cuban intelligence is weak now. They have no money. The people are furious. If we give a little push now, this 65-year-old regime will collapse like a house of cards. Trump recently shared a post on Truth Social saying Marco Rubio could be the next president of Cuba. This might be Trump's characteristic humor, but the message behind it is extremely profound. The message is, America is no longer a spectator. America is now a player. And the striker in this game is Marco Rubio, to whom Coach Donald Trump has passed the ball. Florida's votes, Rubio's personal revenge, and Trump's political ambition. These three streams have merged at one point today, and that point is regime change in Havana. Key West Beach, Florida. If a tourist looks south from here with powerful binoculars, they can see a faint landmass on the horizon. That is Cuba. Located just 90 miles from America, this island nation has been a thorn in the U.S. throat for the last 65 years. But looking at the map hanging in Donald Trump's Oval Office, one realizes that this 90-mile distance is no longer just geographical, it has turned into a terrifying geopolitical battlefield. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union threatened to destroy America by placing nuclear missiles on this very island. And today, in 2026, the Trump administration feels history has returned. But this time, the enemy is not the Soviet Union. This time, the enemies are China and Russia. To understand this aggressive form of Trump's foreign policy, we must go back to 1823. Then U.S. President James Monroe announced a policy known in history as the Monroe Doctrine. Simply put, its essence was, the Western Hemisphere or the Americas belongs only to America. No interference from Europe or outside powers will be tolerated here. Although America has followed this policy for the last 2 centuries, there was some relaxation in between. But in his second term, Donald Trump has given this policy a radical nationalist form. Analysts have named it the Monroe Doctrine. Speaking to his supporters at Mar-a-Lago, Trump clearly stated, "Under our new national security strategy, no one will dare question American dominance in the Western Hemisphere." The meaning is clear. Whether Cuba practices socialism is not the main point. The main point is whether Cuba is acting as a proxy for China and Russia. The question is, why is Trump suddenly so worried about Cuba? Why target Cuba after removing Venezuela's Maduro? The answer lies in Pentagon intelligence reports. Over the last few years, China has secretly built electronic spy bases on Cuban soil. It is possible to eavesdrop on all secret communications of the U.S. Central Command and Special Forces headquarters located in Florida from these bases. On the other hand, Russia is not lagging behind. Vladimir Putin is sending nuclear-powered submarines and warships to Cuban ports to expand his influence. The presence of Russian frigates in Havana harbor is a direct threat to America. Trump's former national security official, Alexander Gray, explained it this way. For China and Russia, Cuba is a cheap way to poke America in the eye. The Trump administration believes the Maduro government in Venezuela was the financier of this China-Russia axis. Now that Maduro is gone, this is the best time to strike Cuba. The objective, to wipe out the influence of Beijing and Moscow from America's backyard forever. In this geopolitical game, Trump is not just pressuring Cuba, he is also pressuring his neighbor, Mexico. After Cuba's oil supply was cut off, Mexico tried to send some oil on humanitarian grounds. But the Trump administration gave a stern warning to Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum. Trump's message was straight. If you go to save Cuba, the doors of trade with America will close for you. By threatening to send troops to the Mexico border and pressuring Mexico in the name of suppressing drug cartels, Trump is essentially completely isolating Cuba. This is being called the isolation strategy. All in all, this pressure on Cuba is not just to restore democracy, it is part of a massive global game. Trump sees Cuba as low-hanging fruit. After losing Venezuela, Cuba is now alone. Russia is busy with the Ukraine war. China is struggling to manage its own economy. At this moment, there is no one to save Cuba with billions of dollars. Trump wants to bring down Cuba's communist government to send a message to the world. There is no place for anyone else in America's courtyard. Within this 90-mile distance, he wants to see no more enemy bases. Therefore, The fall of Havana is not just a political victory for him, it is the ultimate implementation of his America First agenda. Havana, Cuba, 10 p.m. The city once called the Paris of the Caribbean, whose alleys used to be intoxicated with salsa music and the smell of cigars all night long, has today turned into a ghost town. As soon as the sun sets, the entire city plunges into pitch darkness. Cuba now faces an average of 12 to 14 hours of load shedding daily because the government has no oil to run the power plants. The little food kept in refrigerators is rotting. Fuel for running generators in hospital ICUs is running out. The Cuban people have been familiar with this situation before. After the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991, they passed through the infamous special period. People hunted cats for food and rode bicycles to offices. But analysts say the crisis of 2026 is far more terrible than the 90s, because then their leader was Fidel Castro, in whom people had blind faith. Today there is no Fidel, no oil, and most importantly, no hope in people's minds. Cuba's pride was its healthcare sector. They used to export doctors worldwide, but the shelves of pharmacies in Havana are now empty. Common painkillers like aspirin or antibiotics are unavailable. The country that once claimed to discover cancer vaccines cannot buy medicine to kill dengue mosquitoes today. As a result, dengue and the Oropouche virus have taken on epidemic proportions. Reports are coming in international media that operation theaters and hospitals lack electricity, and doctors are performing surgeries under mobile phone flashlights. This humanitarian disaster seems to mock the Cuban Communist government's claim of a welfare state. This economic despair is breaking Cuban society from within. People can no longer fill their stomachs with revolutionary slogans. As a result, the largest exodus in history has begun, and the statistics are startling. Since 2020, approximately 1 to 2 million Cubans have fled the country. This is about 10 to 15% of Cuba's total population. Many times more people have left the country in the last 4 years than fled during the famous Mariel boat lift of the 90s. Those leaving are mostly young and capable. As a result, Cuba is turning into an old age home. Only children and the elderly are left behind. Experts call this demographic suicide. Dreaming of an economic turnaround in a country without youth power is merely a luxury. But within this darkness, the fire of anger has ignited. On July 11, 2021, an unprecedented event occurred in Cuba's history. Thousands of people took to the streets chanting, "We are hungry, we want freedom." The most significant change has come in the slogans. Fidel Castro's famous slogan was, "Patria o muerte," motherland or death. But the youth are now chanting, "Patria y vida," motherland and life. They do not want to take an oath of death, they want to live. Experts like William Leo Grande say the wall of fear has broken for the Cuban people. They no longer respect the government. They hate it. Even the government's own surveys show that public trust in the Communist Party has hit rock bottom. Donald Trump and Marco Rubio want to strike exactly at this spot. Their strategy is Hunger Games. They know that the Cuban army and police, who have kept the government afloat so far, are also part of this society. When a soldier has no food at home, when his child suffers for lack of medicine, will he still shoot at the hungry crowd on the street? The Trump administration hopes that once the oil supply stops completely, cracks will appear in the Cuban army. The generals might realize that sitting on this sinking ship is no longer safe. Trump wants the Cuban elites to bring down the government themselves to save their own skins after the fall of Maduro. Cuba's economy is now just a skeletal body. Venezuelan oil was the life support for that body. Trump has pulled that plug and is now just waiting for the time when the heartbeat stops completely. While Donald Trump and Marco Rubio are counting the days to Havana's fall, experienced officials at the Pentagon and CIA are digging through old files. They have one question in mind. Are we making the same mistake again? Over the last 65 years, at least 12 US presidents have come and gone. Each of them thought at some point, this is the end. Cuba won't survive. But every time, the Cuban Communist government has risen from the rubble like a phoenix. Many international relations analysts are terming the Trump administration's confident prediction of Cuba's fall as magical thinking. Why? Because the Cuban regime is not an ordinary political party, it is an impenetrable military fortress. The answer to why the fall of Havana is not so easy lies in a short acronym, GAESA. This is a massive business conglomerate controlled by the Cuban military. Tourism, hotels, import-export, supermarkets, ownership of everything in Cuba lies in the hands of GAESA. President Miguel Díaz-Canel may be the face of the country, but the real power, or power behind the throne, lies with the generals of Cuba's Revolutionary Armed Forces, or FAR. These generals know that if the government falls, they won't just lose their seats, they will end up in international court or prison. Their assets worth billions of dollars will be confiscated. So for the sake of survival, these military elites will keep the government alive with their last drop of blood. The biggest weakness of Trump's plan is, there is no Juan Guaido or Maria Corina Machado in Cuba. In Venezuela, there was a strong anti-Maduro stance. They had leaders and international recognition. But in Cuba, over the past 6 decades, Fidel and Raúl Castro have meticulously eradicated dissenting opinions. Those who were qualified to lead are either rotting in jail or exiled in Miami. Inside Cuba, there is no charismatic leader whose call would bring millions onto the streets to face the army or police. Former U.S. diplomat Jeffrey De Laurentiis explained this void. Who will we talk to? There is no one to call in Havana. If the government falls, there is no organized force on Cuban soil to fill the void. Another complex psychological factor is the mindset of the Cuban people. The younger generation is undoubtedly furious with the government, but there is another side to the coin. Suspicion of America is still strong among elderly citizens and rural people. They are proud of Cuba's sovereignty. They may hate the government, but they also don't want a group of white Cubans from Florida to come and rule their country. The government still survives by leveraging this nationalistic pride. So what does Trump actually want? According to military analysts, Trump will not conduct a commando operation or invasion in Cuba like in Venezuela because the Cuban army is far more disciplined and trained than Venezuela's. Attacking there could turn into a prolonged guerrilla war, which Trump does not want. Trump's real strategy is implosion, an explosion from within. He wants the situation to reach such a stage due to lack of oil and money that junior officers and common soldiers of the Cuban army will revolt. He wants such chaos on the streets of Havana that the generals themselves are forced to remove Díaz-Canel and sit at the negotiating table with America. All in all, the fall of Cuba is not as simple in reality as it seems imminent. Havana is now sitting on a time bomb. On one side is Trump's maximum pressure, on the other, a hungry populace. But standing as a wall in the middle are the Cuban army and their business interests. Is the fall imminent? Or is it a fantasy? The answer depends on a single question. Will the Cuban army keep their guns pointed at their people? Or will they turn the barrels toward their own generals? Standing at this crossroads of history, Havana is trembling. But the world may not have to wait much longer to see if that trembling is of fear or of change.